Hi guys, I hope you're all well. Yeah, today I'd love us to talk about personal change. I'd love us to talk about personal change and personal choices, as those things are what we exercise on a day to day basis. One way or the other, uh, we find ourselves at points where we have to make a decision to change because our lives are not as what we had thought would be. At times, we find ourselves having made choices that impact us negatively. So, I'd love to talk with you today and say we can change all of that and we can do something. Nothing is lost. Uh, there is never a hopeless case. There is never a helpless case. So one way or the other, I'm hoping that I'd be able to help you. Now, let me start talking about change and use the following story that might be a popular story that you could have heard maybe while you were young or ukula and so forth. Now, here's the thing. Kuthiwa, there was this guy who was a pastor, and the pastor unomntwana having a child. Now, on this specific Saturday, the wife to the pastor had left and went to some women's service. So this is what happened. The pastor later on decides that he needs to go and prepare a sermon for the following day, which of course is a Sunday. But as he does that, the young boy, who's only 6 years old, left with him so that he can babysit him. So he's got two tasks. He has to babysit the child and also prepare the sermon that he has to prepare. But as he attempts to prepare a sermon for Sunday, the young boy comes to his father, Daddy, I want to play. Now he has to leave his sermon and go and attend to the son. And as he attends to the son, he does what he can to give the son a few exercises, a few games that can keep the young man, the young boy, active, so that at least he can steal some moment and be alone and prepare or continue preparing the sermon for Sunday. But a few minutes later, the young man comes, Daddy, I want to play. I'm done with that. I'm done with that exercise. I'm done with that game. And ultimately, or at the end of it all, the pastor then decides, let me take a map. There was a picture of a map. He decides, let me take it and tear it into pieces. He tears it into pieces. Once it's torn into pieces, he gives it to the young man. He says, Mfanam, my son, I want you to put back this map into one image, into what it was. And when you are done, you will come back and we'll have time, me and you, to play. Then he leaves the son. He goes back to his office to prepare the sermon. After a few minutes, the young man is here again. He says, Daddy, I'm done. He then says to his son, or asks his son this question, Son, what is it that enabled you to put back the map in such a short space of time? Because that was about 4 minutes. Then the young boy replies to his father and says, Daddy, all that I had to do was to put back the man behind the picture, behind the paper. And once I did that, then the world map was fixed. So he says that's how I did it. And the lesson behind that story is that in order for you to change the world, you have to change the man behind the world, or you have to change the man in the world. In other words, there is no way that you can change your world, whether it's your personal world, whether it's your financial world, whether it's a church world or business world. There is no way you can change it without changing yourself first. So all the young man had to do was to make sure that he puts back the man behind the map so that the map was fixed. You want to fix the world, you got to fix the man. You want to fix your family, you got to fix yourself. You want to fix your life, you got to fix yourself. You want to fix your finances, you've got to fix yourself. That's just one of those things that people take light. People think that things will change by themselves, things will be okay by themselves. And life has taught us that that is a lie. We deceive ourselves when we think that things can change by themselves. It is never the case. It doesn't happen that way. Now, having shared that story, I want to just share 5 things about change that I believe can help you or help us as we embark on personal change, because I know one way or the other, we are all on a path of change. We are all on a journey of change. Now, the first thing that I want to mention is that change only happens when we acknowledge, when we admit, when we admit our faults, admit our weaknesses, admit our sins, admit our shortcomings. In other words, there is no way you can change up until you get to that point where you are able to identify what is it that you did wrong, what is it that you did not do well. My point is with this, if you want to change, there must be that one thing in your life that you did wrong. Yes, maybe your finances are not in good shape. Maybe your family is not in good order. But is it the fault of your family only? Is it the fault of your husband only? Is it the fault of your wife only? You might find that you had a part to play. And I'm saying to us, we ought to be able to admit where we went wrong. We ought to be able to admit our sin. We ought to be able to admit our error. One thing that makes us not change, it is simply that we are not willing to admit that we are human, and at times we commit weaknesses or we commit faults. And we commit those faults because naturally as people we have our own weaknesses. So my challenge to you, the first challenge, is that look at your own life and ask yourself, where did I do wrong? This loan that I have, the amount of debt that I have, my family that is in disarray, my business that is dying. What is it that I did that added to that? What is it that was a factor that led to my business, my church, my life, my finances to be in such disarray? So look at yourself first. But secondly, the second point that I'd love to make to us is that change must be vision focused. Change must be vision focused. In other words, you got to be asking yourself, where am I going? Where do I want to be? Because you don't just change. You don't just change. And I will tell you why. Why I'm saying change has got to be vision focused. It is simply that, or the answer to that is that change or success have their own requirements. A vision has its own requirements. So in other words, if I want to be, let's say I want to live a fulfilling life, there are requirements to that. There are things that I need to do in order for me to get to that point where I say my life is fulfilling. If I want to be a success in business, there are requirements that I need to meet. There are things that I need to do in order for my business to be where I want it to be, in order for my church to be where I want it to be, for my family to be where I want it to be. So a vision or change is always focused or future focused. You need to be asking yourself, where am I going? What is it that is required for me to get to where